I'm Caroline Rush, Chief Executive of the British Fashion Council. Welcome to London Fashion Week Digital. Today I'm joined by the team from British GQ Style, who we usually see in force at the show's presentation and events during what would be normally at this time of year on Men's Fashion Week. So it's only right that we see them in force on here today. They'll be answering questions sent to them by the public via social media, discussing the fashion industry and, more importantly, how during this momentous time of change, how creativity has never been more important. So I'm going to hand over to editor of GQ Style, Luke Day, and his brilliant team, Elgar, Gary, Ben and Kit. Luke, over to you.
Hi, thanks Caroline. It's nice to see all my team as well. We haven't seen each other since this has all happened, so this is like a really lovely moment as well. Today we're going to be discussing everything that's kind of happening in our current climate, and also how change can make a difference, and how unity can kind of come from this. So what we have questions. Do you think that fashion brands' responses to Black Lives Matter are going to impact where consumers spend their money, and why?
I feel like the correct answer is that it should, and that brands should be kind of called out for not doing enough if they aren't doing enough, and that should be reflected in how people are spending their money. I think that that's the only way that real impact can be made to a fashion brand especially.
Yeah, I think that this particular moment in time, there's a lot to be said for accountability. And I think that the consumer is really thinking about that. And I think you're seeing that a lot on social media and across the conversations that people are having, is that, you know, an empty sort of statement possibly isn't enough. And that it really needs to be backed up by something physical and tangible.
I think the important thing is that brands kind of identify how they need to communicate and engage with their audience, so that the consumer wants to spend their money. It's like they need to have the correct message. I guess they need to kind of get it right, which is not always going to be easy, but I think that people appreciate, you know, people making an effort and really trying. And also I hope that the consumer is smart enough that they make wise choices.
What efforts and changes are GQ Style looking to implement to support the Black Lives Matter movement going forward? I think that we are together now going to be much more vocal, and I think that's key to you know, helping develop and change the way that we work, and as a team in general. I think we will be educating each other and others as well. I think we're very keen to go out and speak to people more, and like even with Luke saying earlier, this is the first time we've sort of Zoomed together and stuff like just us. But now I think we need to get out and speak to students, colleges, you know, various different people within the public, and try and engage with them and get their opinions as well.
Yeah, I feel like also, like, creatively we've kind of prided ourselves on pushing the conversation forward with the magazine already, but I think that now even more so we need to be kind of at the forefront of like making sure that we are being representative of people that are overlooked, especially within this industry. I think it's an important thing, and it's kind of a vital thing. And if we don't do it, then we are part of the problem.
Yeah, I think it's really important that anyone would be able to pick up the magazine going forward and see themselves represented in some way. And I think that goes beyond just what you see in the pages, but also in terms of creatively the teams that make it happen. I think it's like a whole thing that we can make sure that to concentrate on heavily going forward.
I mean, I think all magazines need to focus on everything being about a better future. I think like everybody needs to be seen and heard now. Everybody needs to be represented. And what magazines can do is they can amplify messages. I mean, that's what we, you know, that's the power that we have. So we need to do that.
I think a good current way of sort of amplifying the message sort of right now is sort of via sharing, as lots of people have been doing already, is by like sharing the message through social media and things like that. And it's about sort of getting these trends going so it can just sort of have as large a reach over social media as possible. And with quite a large platform, we're at quite a good sort of standpoint to be able to do that and help out.
I think, like I said, I think it's important for every magazine to be doing that now, but also every brand, everybody. This is the thing. I think it's like the inclusivity needs to be that it's about everybody making an effort, everybody making a change, everybody rethinking, reprogramming, learning. I think we're all learning again, which is also, it's always really exciting to learn, I think. So I've learned a huge amount this week. I learn from talking to you guys all the time. So yeah. I think that that's what we need to do now. I think that, you know, we don't have all the answers yet, but we're finding them all out, and that's the best we can do right now.
I think it's also important to think of it as being like a permanent change, and not just something that we're going to do right now. It's like something that starts now and then will be forever changed.
Oh, totally. I think this is the beginning. This is the beginning of a huge movement which is going to change everything forever. I don't think this is just a small change for now. This isn't just a trend. This is our new life coming out of Corona, or coming, you know, through everything we're going through now, and coming out as a better human race.
And I think it's key that we do, as opposed to just chat, because there's been various times in the past when there's, you know, been potential movements and moments like this happening, and people have just spoken about them and said, oh, you know, we need to do this and we need to do that, but then we never did it.
Yeah.
So now let's do it.
Or just saying we need to be better is not good enough now. Like, you have to actually be better, not need to be, you know?
Yeah. Question number 3. Who's that?
Me, actually, I'm reading that one. Do you ever see diversity becoming an unconscious strategy rather than the current focus on quotas?
I think it definitely should be, and should have always been. But I understand that perhaps at certain times it hasn't been an unconscious strategy just because of the systemic problems that we're discussing right now.
Yeah. I feel like, unfortunately, as white people, we didn't necessarily realize that it wasn't an unconscious thing, because we think it as a team, and we think it, but the people that we know think like that. But there are so many people that don't think like that. So the kind of idea of it being a quota felt like it was so outdated. But in actual fact, that is the reality that we live in. That is the way that a lot of people are employed and judged and put into categories. And I think that that's something that really has to change, like completely. Just, and whether it becomes an unconscious strategy, maybe it needs to be a conscious strategy for the foreseeable, so that people actually actively make a decision to change that.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, as a person of colour, I at times definitely felt like I am there just as you know, to fill the spot, and that going forward, that can't be the way anymore. No one should feel like they're not there based on talent, just based on colour, because it's necessary for that moment. I think even saying that is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So we all need to work hard to make sure that isn't the case within the industry.
Maybe now's the time, yes, just because you're talking about your experiences, but I think the reason we're here is because you wrote this really amazing piece for GQ Online about your experiences of growing up and also experiencing racism within the fashion industry. And I think it would be good just to kind of to go over it and explain to people your story, because some people might not have seen it. And I think that it was such an important thing that happened last week within our world, and it really touched us all because it was so honest. And
yeah, it's hard to sort of understand everyone else's feelings towards it, because I can only, you know, I lived it and I'm living it. So I've had an incredibly brilliant response and incredible encouraging words from people, but you know, it's hard. You know, when people say you're brave for doing that and you're well done for doing that and stuff like that, it's almost patronising. But it shouldn't be, because I think people are trying to be, you know, positive about the piece that I did. But it's no. What do you guys think? When you read it? What did you think? What was?
It's because I feel like I was the person that said, well done to you, but it was more because...
There was more than you though, so you're all right.
It's also because I know that you aren't the kind of person that wants to get involved in a race conversation just for the sake of getting into a race conversation, because it's met with a brick wall a lot of the time. So to do that and to put that out there, I think is really powerful. And I think that it definitely is really inspirational to all of us as a team, but also to other people within the industry, and also wider than that, like other readers that are either relating to your experience or are aware that are being made aware that experience even exists.
Yeah, and I have to say there were things that I read in there that I didn't even know, and we've worked together for years and years and years and years, and I just thought it was quite amazing that you'd spoken about them, and it was things that were so insidious that they hadn't even come up in conversations with us, because it felt like I don't know, I found it, I thought it was amazing. I lost my way there a little bit, sorry.
I think that also it must have resonated with a lot of people. I think a lot of people can relate to it, but they've never been able to speak up about it before. And I think that's why people think it's brave, because I think that we have all kind of let these things slide past a lot. I think that we've all been complacent with these things. So I think that you speaking up has meant that maybe other people can speak up, rather than by the kind of people being complacent. I think that's why you've maybe helped some people.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier in a conversation with some people that, when I first wrote it, it was a case of I was a bit unsure whether I might get thrown under the bus. I wasn't sure. I don't know, because it's happened before where there's a lot of, times that, that has happened, and not necessarily with you guys. I'm talking about in general, like silent partners almost. But you get to a point when, and I said earlier that you sort of don't care about the bus anymore. And that's what happened. It was kind of like, this is what I had to say, because if I hadn't said it, I was part of the problem that we have, what we have now. So, it was just, it was something that had to be said. And also, there's, and I'm going to say it, but there's not a huge amount of, diversity in the company that I work within, if I'm being completely honest. And you need to get the opinions of the people that matter right now. And I wanted to be able to voice my opinion, and I think it was correct, and I think it was the right time to do that.
I agree.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's important that everybody sort of gets their voices heard and shouldn't feel judged for it. And it's almost like, I don't know, embarrassing in a way that that you have been made to kind of feel like that you might be thrown under a bus just by voicing your opinions because of how the way the world has been set up and has worked.
I hope that that we would have never thrown you under a bus. But I do understand as well that it goes beyond just our direct team, and it goes beyond just our direct company. It's like it's an industry as a whole that has a lot of room for growth, and that people need to understand that those kind of comments that you explained, those kind of experiences that you explained, are unacceptable, and that they won't be stood for any longer by any of us, whether it's a person of color that's experiencing it or whether it's one of us hearing it.
Yeah.
Like it can't happen anymore. It really can't.
And I think that what you just said, that exactly there is the biggest change, is that all of a sudden everyone now is speaking up. Whether you're black, whether you're white, everyone now is coming forward and saying, that's not okay. Yeah. That's not cool. You can't do that. We won't stand for that. And that's the biggest difference I personally see with this whole movement now.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think that's really important as well, because sometimes people don't even know they're making mistakes, but it's really important to listen, I think, when you are, because I don't think that everyone is always going to get everything right. But I think that if we make sure that there's a culture of saying when something's not right, as long as a person is willing to, then all you can do from that is grow and learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, unfortunately, because of the way that the system works, we are all going to make mistakes at certain points, and we are going to make missteps. But I think it's about taking accountability for those mistakes and saying, I got that wrong and I hold my hands up to it, rather than trying to explain your way out of it because you're uncomfortable. Your discomfort is nothing in comparison to the way that you made the person feel that you did it to.
Agreed.
Should we move on to question 4?
Ready for another one? So the next question would be, what companies or brands do you think work well on focusing on equality and tackling racism that other brands could learn from? I think that what we saw this week with L'Oreal, with how they reacted to the outcry about what they'd done to Monroe Bergdorf in the past, was something that was really good for people to learn from, not just brands, but people in general, that they made a mistake. They made a mistake again. They were told what their mistake was, and they came back and corrected it and engaged with the person whom they'd made a mistake to and upset and hurt, and really quite, it was quite horrible what happened.
I think also with that, what's interesting about it is that you could very quickly be like, well, they didn't do it fast enough. And I think that is true. But at the same time, it's better to have caught it at some point than to have never caught themselves at all. And like, if it's taken this to make people actually wake up, then at least people are waking up. I think there are other brands that do a good job with it, but I don't feel like there's enough.
There's massive room for improvement. Like, they're all going to try, and especially right now, everyone's going to try and make a difference, but there's trying again and doing. They have to do it. They have to make a difference. Else it won't change, and they know that now. Surely they know that now.
I think there are some brands that are doing quite well, though. I think Nike, that campaign that they put out, which they were the first ones to get something out, and that was so impactful, and it really travelled. Do you agree with me about that Nike campaign that literally they were the first people out there, and I think that the one last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was great. I think Nike, they've always been a company that have seized the moment, if you like, and with situations that are going on in the world, they have a very brilliant team there that put things together very quickly and put them out. However, they've come under a lot of pressure because a lot of people are saying, well, it looks lovely, but what else?
Yeah.
Like, you can put out a brilliant campaign, but what else are you doing? Because people will just post it. I posted it. I thought it was brilliant, but I don't know. What else are you going to do?
When you look at like the huge show they did in New York, a bit like the Fenty show as well, where it's a bit more, where there was so much representation and so much inclusivity within the casting for those shows, and I think that's a really powerful message as well.
I was just going to say that I think we're seeing a lot of young London brands doing as much as they possibly can also to help, with donations and
Absolutely.
Sending things to places. And I think that is actually, that's as powerful as the big brands' messages, because at this time, they've been hit really hard by coronavirus. No one's in a financial situation that's very good for them. And seeing people doing things that, it might not be the most or like the biggest thing ever, but even if as much as they can do, it's really amazing to see.
Yeah. And I think it's important that we do, the brands that are doing that, the young designers we're talking about as well, the London designers, etc. It's important that we support them as well.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to make a change. We're all trying to do it together.
Yeah, I think it's also like, it's important for us to remember that we have a platform with the magazine, and we have to use that platform to support the brands that actually are doing the work. I think that's the only way that they will, or especially London designers that don't necessarily have the money to spend on advertising, when if they're going out of their way to also help make a difference in the world, we owe it to them to then pay it forward and represent them correctly.
Question
number 5.
Next.
In general, have you seen a shift in what content your readers are wanting? Has this influenced what brands you would and wouldn't write about?
I think that because we come out twice a year, we don't necessarily know that our readers have definitely pivoted in a different direction. But I think we can speak for ourselves and say that we all definitely have changed our outlook and kind of what our priorities and focus are just generally. I think that is a change that's happened.
I think that Corona has changed all of the way that we think and the way that we consume anything, especially content right now, and it's changed our values. And I think that also then with Black Lives Matters and all of protests that are going on, that's also going to impact as well. And it's like even when you look at the way Instagram has changed now, it's like it's such a powerful tool. And actually, the past 2 weeks has been way more interesting and way more educational. So that in itself, I think, is also changing the way that we as consumers want to learn about things as well. And that's, you know, what we do with a magazine, but that's also what we do as consumers and how we want to learn about new things as well.
I feel a little bit, I don't care about celebrities anymore. Not that I was obsessed with them before, but I just feel like it just feels so kind of...
We're a little bit.
A little bit. I mean, some people. But like, I feel like it's really just not about celebrating celebrity for celebrity's sake. I think that the people who are in a position of influence over their community, whether it's their followers or their listeners or whatever, I think it's important that they then communicate the right message that they would want to hear. Should we move on?
Yeah. Oh, who's that? Me? Is it?
No, it's me. It's me again.
Oh.
So shut up. Okay. Do you feel a responsibility to not represent and market brands which have been called out for racism within GQ Style?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
It's obviously a difficult thing politically and financially, but I think that it's really important that we put our money where our mouth is, or not put our money where our mouth is, I guess is the more pertinent way of saying it. Because if we get behind brands that we don't believe in, then what's the point in us saying that we believe in things?
Unless there is pure evidence that certain brands are trying to change, and I'm not talking about just putting up a black square, you know, I'm talking about real pure evidence where editors, stylists, you know, writers can go and see this happening, then we shouldn't support them. And we should get our money from somewhere else. And I know it's easier said than done, but I mean, that is the case. As it will never change.
Yeah.
There's been quite, again, like circumstances that I've had to sit through certain shows and applaud at the end and watch everyone else applauding and smiling and thinking it was great, and then getting out and then everyone having the same feeling of, well, that was absolutely awful. But you can't say anything, apparently, because they're funding you. So it's a real clear message for me. I'm like, unless you're gonna change, then we won't support you.
It's about everybody joining and doing this together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we could really lead on as well. I mean, obviously, I know that it's a difficult conversation to have, but I think it's good that we are having difficult conversations, and I think that that's what this is about also.
It's a difficult subject. If it was easy, then it wouldn't be a problem.
Absolutely. I mean, it's going to take a real effort and a real, you know, but I expect this. We should all expect that now. We should all expect brands to want to make a change. So this conversation probably doesn't need to be had, because hopefully they're all going to change, and we don't have to think about not working with people that don't want to change.
Yeah. I think it's also like there have definitely been mistakes made across the board with many, many different brands and many different magazines and many different industries. But I think that right now, if we hold everyone accountable for what they do next, I think that's the only measure that we can really give to this situation. Because if we just look at what their history has been, then it's like saying that everyone should just be locked up and nobody should ever be allowed for release from prison. I think it's important that you can make amends by making positive steps forward. So it's more like what happens next with these brands that will be the biggest statement on how we can support them going forward.
You have to give people the opportunity. You can't just go in, you know, blazing, saying, we're not working with them, they're racist. You have to give people the opportunity to now change and, you know, be part of something better.
Yeah.
And, you know, if they can do that, then, yeah, we don't even have to have a conversation. Do you think that the fashion industry will be able to sustain the momentum that we're currently seeing in support of Black Lives Matter?
I think we have to. I think that we can't. I think that it will slow down, and it'll be really disappointing to see it slow down. But I think that we as individuals, and we as a team, and we as a magazine, and we as a brand need to keep the conversation moving. Because if we start going quiet about it, then then everyone else can follow suit, and it becomes easy, and then no change has happened. I think we have to keep shouting about it, and we have to keep these conversations, these uncomfortable things that, like we were saying earlier, we've never had a conversation as a team about race, because it didn't seem like the kind of conversation that we needed to have. But in actual fact, it was absolutely vital, and by having it, we all feel like we're learning something.
I mean, this is the beginning of the revolution, right?
I hope so.
Well,
yeah.
Everyone's got to be in it together, and everyone's got to want the same things to make it a revolution.
Yeah.
Else it just becomes a damp squib, and everyone's.
But also the thing about revolutions is that it's because everybody doesn't have the same ideology, but there is the correct thing that needs to happen and the right thing. So that's why there's an uprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in terms of longevity in the conversation, we just have to check ourselves constantly and make sure that we're not leaving this behind at any point, and make sure that this is part of our conscious going forward in what we produce and what we create and in what we do.
Yeah.
Imagine if we genuinely believed in this as being a trend. Like, how revolting.
Yeah,
but there are, unfortunately, there possibly are some people that do think it's a trend, and that's the people we've got to convince almost that it's not, which sounds disgusting, but
yeah. It's really shocking.
We're all right. I think that the way that we think about this is that how do we keep the momentum going? How do we all keep the message alive? How do we support other people within our industry to do that? How do we keep educating people? How do we make sure that people are still listening?
Well, we have this really good platform called GQ Style that comes out twice a year, and we'll be using to do that. I think
it needs to be big. It needs to be bigger than that. I don't think this conversation is just about us. I think it's about everybody. That's the thing. I think.
And I think what I mean is that I think that we can't underestimate that a magazine has sway with its readership and sway within the industry that it relates to. So I think that by us as a team enforcing the need for that conversation to stay relevant and to stay at the top of people's priorities will mean that the conversation will hopefully not die down. And I think that obviously as individuals we can do as much as we can, but I think that our biggest platform is definitely the magazine.
I think that also we have to, but I completely agree with you, but I also think that we're all our own platforms as well. As in, it's everyone's voices that counts. It's not just about whether a magazine is a bigger platform. It's like we need everybody to be their own platform right now and come together on this.
Well, even if you post one thing and you influence one person to reconsider their bigoted attitude, then a difference has been made. Like, obviously, the more people you can influence to change their attitudes towards something that is the right thing. This isn't about an opinion. It's not like, should we stop killing black people or do Black Lives Matter? It's like, they do. It's obvious. Let's stop being ridiculous. That's that on that.
Any more questions?
Oh, I think, do I have one more?
I think you do, yeah.
Oh, God, this is quite interesting. Do you feel that the playing field is level in the fashion industry, or that white or wealthy or privileged people are afforded an easier way in? I think I'll start here. I think that, speaking from my personal experiences, when I was young, which is a long time ago, I started in the industry 20 years ago, and it definitely helped when I was in that period of time. That I think that if you came from a wealthier background and you could afford to maybe intern at magazines for free, then you got a foot up a lot quicker. Or if your parents knew somebody, if you were connected in some way, it wasn't necessarily about your merit or your talent. It was just about how well you were connected. And it happens a lot. And I would hope that it doesn't happen as much anymore. I mean, I don't think that necessarily does happen as much. I think we're all examples of that. I mean, none of us have grown up wealthy or connected. So we have all kind of worked really hard, and we've all got to where we are based on merit and hard work. So I think that, you know, we're already shining examples of the industry changing.
Yeah, I think that's true. What I would say also, that I think when it comes to people of colour, I think, you know, it's been said there's an acceptable amount of being black for the industry.
Yeah.
For people of colour, from what the people I've seen that have been given opportunities, it's almost like they fit into a box. So if a magazine or if a company are looking for someone that's quite street, it works. Now, if you've got a you know, rich young black person, that also works because that's a novelty. And people find that fascinating, and it's again, it's white enough. It's a white enough black.
I just think further on from that, yes, not necessarily any of us are from like wealthy backgrounds, but I think we all have privilege in a different way, and I do think there have probably been opportunities afforded to me, especially, that might not have been afforded to me if I was a young black boy and not a young white boy. And I am aware of that, and that's what we need to fight against. And I do think that's, you know, as hard as it is to reckon with, as hard as you've worked and as much of you've done, like, are there certain things that happened that wouldn't have happened to you if you look different? And I think you really have to have a long, hard think about that in lots of ways.
You know what is a really good example? I feel like in lots of different scenarios over in magazines, I can't imagine there being two black fashion assistants at the same time. And that makes me sad.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's gross. I think it's almost like we have to look at our own privilege as a baseline that we kind of perceive it as being, we had to work hard, which we did, and we come from privilege, which we didn't. But we also, we don't have the race category that we have to then also contend with. It's like it makes things 10 times harder. And as much as, yes, it's good that things are really changing and moving forward, it's not necessarily changed. I think there hasn't been a time of change in our lifetime since that is as big as the one that's happening right now. And hopefully that will permeate across everything.
Yeah, it's an extra layer of hardship that's built into the system, not just in fashion, but in everything, in everywhere in the whole world. It's an extra layer of hardship. You know, you can't you say, you know, you hear a lot of people see people on Instagram like in the wrong thing, being like, yeah, but I've had a hard life or whatever. And, you know, it's not relatable. No one's discounting that your life has been hard. What all they're saying is that you also didn't have that hardship to contend with at the same time as all the other stuff. Yeah. And I think that what is important when it comes to looking at how people have got their foot in the door.
Yeah. Because I think there's definitely elements of what Luke said, which I completely sort of resonate with, and I completely believe is correct. But from my own experience, I feel like if I hadn't had the association with Simon Foxton, who has championed black people for many, many years, I mean, throughout his whole career, in fact, if I didn't have that association, I don't know how easy it would have been for me to sort of get to where I am now. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And I really don't want to think that would be the case now. I think, you know, we have to make sure that doesn't happen.
I think also, like, let's not ignore the elephant in the room. Like, there's 5 of us on this call and it's only one person of colour and no females. Like, maybe we can do better in terms of our inclusivity in the team going forward, and the people that we work with and the people that we support and the people that we bring forward. Like, I think that we have a collective responsibility to do better. It's not just looking at what other people can do better, it's what we can do better as well. Like, we haven't got to the finish line of inclusivity and we haven't ended white privilege in this room. Like, not this room, this room. Like, I think that it's important, it's important for us all to think of it as being like something that we're working on forever and we'll never get to the finish line of, rather than, I'm here, I've arrived, I'm no longer rested, and the world's perfect. Because unfortunately, you have to keep the conversation going in order for the conversation to go somewhere.
Yeah. And I think what I will say, I mean, because I know we're sort of coming towards the end of our questions and stuff, but what I will say is I think that working within the GQ Style team is already something that we already have, like that, we already have that sort of almost that step already, because we've challenged so many different taboos, especially since I've been there. In the 5 years I've been there, it's been, you know, we have really gone through all sorts of different, you know, things that have been going on in the world, and we really reference what's going on now. And I think that, you know, I think we should all be, you know, we should be aware of that. And, you know, we're not necessarily starting from scratch here. You know, we're doing things already. We're trying to make a difference. And I'm so confident and I'm so excited to see now where we go next with everything that's happening.
Same.
Me too.
Me too.
Absolutely.
I feel like it's like we can all agree that we have always tried to push the boundaries in terms of what GQ as a brand is and is known for. And I think that GQ Style has the opportunity to be kind of the rebellious one and the one that talks about more diverse topics. But I think if ever there was a time for us to really go there, like now is the time. Like we have to go to the extreme so that we can really point out how far away from center the world is, you know. It's like we have to make sure that we are doing all that we can to make that happen.
It was great to see you all. And I love that we can have these really like open, honest conversations. I think that's so important as a team. And I think that that's, you know, again, if other companies can do the same thing, then we're all moving in the right direction.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.